sometimes the most impactful data that you have is coming through either your customer service. If you look at that and start to mine it, you start to notice the type of questions people are asking. So that's kind of a starting place.
Broadcasting from Boston, Massachusetts, you're listening to the Technology Equals Equality podcast.
Welcome back to the Technology Equals Equality podcast. I'm your host, Lori Brooks, and this is episode 72. I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming serial entrepreneur Rick West back to the show. We had the opportunity to hear all about Rick's entrepreneurial journey from 16 years of employment with Procter & Gamble to launching Field Agent back on episode 12. He joined us again in 2015 as he launched his next venture, ClassCheck. Listen in as Rick joins us today to share all about his newest venture, Jicco. Rick, welcome back and thank you so much for joining us today.
How are you?
I am very well. How are you, Rick?
Good. Long time no talk to.
I know. It was back in 2015, I believe, when you were just launching ClassCheck. So
isn't that crazy?
It is. I'm super excited to have you back on today. Tell me all about how you have been, how it has been with Juggling, Field Agent, and ClassCheck. I'm super excited to jump into the story of Jicco, but I'd love for you to just catch us up as to how things have been.
Yeah. So if you think about our natural progression for us, it's taken that technology that we developed, back in the day. I remind people we started this in pre-selfie days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for people to imagine that there were actually smartphones with no front-facing camera, but there really were. And so if you fast forward a few years, we tried a couple of things. And so we're at this point today where we have this critical mass of individuals that are downloading and using our apps. We've just surpassed 1 million users, which is fantastic.
Congrats.
Well, thank you. And if you look at that critical mass, our question was, how do we continue to use, our strength, which is understanding, research and insights and how to put all that together, and then also using the strength of our technology. And then this third piece of this huge panel of people that we have, how do we kind of, take that and use it in a different way, but still capitalizing, on the machine that we built. And that's really when Jicco came to life for us. And so when we launched Jicco a few months back, it was really taking our methodology and our process to a whole new level.
Now, from what I understand, Jicco is a retail search engine. So I'd love to know how that differs from the original Field Agent, which I believe was the retail auditing solution, which is kind of big data on real-time information as to what's on the store shelves, which to me sounded similar to Jicco, but I'd love to know, the expansion there and how that works.
Sure. So, Lori, it is similar. I mean, we really are using the same engine, but you can imagine in this fast-paced world that we live in,
right.
We took the typical engagement from months and weeks down to weeks and days, mm-hmm. and now we're getting people saying, yeah, but I really need something like today or in a few hours. What can you do for me? And our traditional model allowed us to engage a client to build some methodology, send something out, and by this, tonight, tomorrow, we're getting data back in. But what we started to realize is that there are times that people really don't need a thought-out design methodology. They simply need an answer to a question. And so we thought, why not actually create a search engine that would do that? Because you can't simply Google what we're doing. So, for example, someone would say, well, but what's happening in an Aldi store, or can you tell me what's happening in the dairy section in a public supermarket? Well, if you Google that, you might get a photo from a year ago, maybe 2 years ago.
Right.
But you couldn't Google it. And in our current methodology, the way it was set up, you could make that request, but by the time we turned it around, came back and forth on the questions, how it would play out, might take you a day. So we created Jicco that allows you to type in a search engine the exact same way you would Google. So instead of saying Google it, we tell people to Jicco it. You type in a question, hey, what's happening in someone's home? How do they store a certain product? Tell me what's going on in a specific store. You type that in, and within 10, 15 minutes, Lori, you've got an answer coming back to your phone.
I love that. You are totally serving the microwave generation's need.
Well, and we couldn't do that, Lori, 4 or 5 years ago, but
right.
We didn't have the critical mass of agents that are out there today. But with 1 million plus people, there are very few retailers, very few people based on demographics that you could be looking for to answer a question that you couldn't make this happen. So in your case today, as we're having this conversation, if you were multitasking with me, by the time you type in a question into Jicco, by the time we finish this interview, you'd already have answers back.
Right.
And that's what I want to challenge your listeners, is that just for fun, we'll give you a free question to answer. And so listen, what's happening at retail, or tell me what's going on, and it's with a specific product or service. Try us out and see what you think. And then we've got a very simple base rate subscription that you can subscribe to this model and get questions answered. And we tell people you either be the smartest person going into the room or you be the smartest person sitting in the meeting, because Jicco is going to give you all the answers you need.
I love it. What do you feel were some of the first steps once the team or yourself came up with this idea of Jicco? What were some of those first steps once that brainstorm moment occurred to actually beginning this new project? And what do you feel was one of the pieces of technology that was most useful for you in terms of juggling all that you do every day, Rick?
Well, we do a bit of juggling here, but Lori, if we've learned anything over our past 10, 15 years of being entrepreneurs after leaving, Fortune 500 companies, is that you have to begin with solving a problem.
Right.
It's one thing to say, here's an interesting piece of technology, let's go play that out, and it's kind of fun, but it's really hard to monetize something unless someone really needs it or you're solving a problem. And so we started to see the problem that I described earlier, which was people really needed fast information, and they just needed to have a question answered. So it's the first piece. The second piece, when I said, hey, Jicco, or go Jicco, there's this little thing called Alexa, a little thing called Siri. We started to realize that people had started to yell into phones and yell into devices and say, hey, why don't you give me this answer or give me that answer? And we said, gosh, we can do that. Right. We can be just like, hey, Alexa, tell me what the price of this is. Hey, Siri, go find this out for me. What Siri and Alexa could not do was provide you near real-time information inside of a store or a home today. And that really was that aha moment that says, we can do this. We can totally play this out. And so we talked to our developers and said, listen, can we make this happen? I said, sure, we can simply lay this out. We talked to our operations team. They said, yeah, I think we can make this happen. And instead of taking months to do it, within 60 days, we're in market.
What do you feel like you learned from launching Jicco in comparison to the launch of ClassTrack and the launch of Field Agent? What do you feel like was different from this launch?
Yeah, I think when you look at Jicco and the way that kind of came about, the one thing that we're learning from it was that there are truly instances where you just need that vote of confidence in your assumption. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is a hypothesis kind of builder. It's an assumption confirmation process for us. And so while we thought we would get more people just, say, hey, find this out for me, find that out, it really is truly that I've got a problem or I have this assumption or this hunch or I have this argument with my friend and we're in this meeting and we're debating. And then with Jicco, within 15 minutes, we're going to prove who's right. I can remember my son asking me about 4 or 5 years ago, he was probably 14, 15 at the time, and he said, Dad, how did you know anything when you were a kid without Google? And I had to explain to him, well, we had dictionaries and we had these encyclopedias. We could look things up. And he said, gosh, you guys were just not very smart at all, were you? Well, I think you can ask the same question today, Lori. How do you know anything at retail unless you're driving all over the country in your car without Jicco?
Right.
Because if you're sitting in your home today and you're trying to find out what's going on in a store in Southern California, and you're trying to understand how moms with children use strollers in the Northeast versus the Southeast, when we start thinking about those types of things, traditional methods of days and weeks and months aren't really going to get you what you're looking for, because you're simply looking for a quick answer. And in your line of work, too, when you think of all the digital type of content you're pushing out, there are times you probably just need to have a confirmation. And so that's really what's coming to fruition for us at this point in time, is that people are saying, wow, you really did hit a sweet spot. We are needing just some basic answers, and this allows us to simply type something in, super easy to do, and I get a text message on my phone in 15 minutes. I mean, Lori, there's nothing like it.
No, it sounds like the most simplified method of market research for
So
anyone
easy.
across
So
the
simple.
board.
Yes.
It's something that's applicable for individuals who are just looking for that quick bit of info. It's applicable for those who are entrepreneurs, small business owners who just kind of need a little collective info and confirmation on certain things that they may have researched in other ways. It's not necessarily the end-all be-all research, but it's the immediate research and that real-time aspect of the research. So you can go online and you can get historical data, or you can turn to Chico and get real-time data. And I think that's what I'm hearing as the major difference, and that's a huge game changer. So I, of course, Rick, am excited to continue catching up with you in the future as you continue launching new things. You always have something exciting to chat about. I love it.
Well, we're thinking. You think about people listening into this. If you're thinking about your business and you're observing and you notice where there's problems, just solve the problem. And then from that, people will follow. And so that's really been the kind of the philosophy we've been following. And so I hope in the next 6 months or so, we're going to find another one of those aha moments, which will make for another interesting phone call for us.
I love it. What do you feel you would change at this point in terms of the way you went about launching Jicco, the way you've launched ClassCheck, and the way you launched Field Agent? Of the three, do you feel like there was something in those three launches that you would have gone back to and made an adjustment if you could at this point?
No, we always do a start, stop, continue type of process, right? Or you really go back and review, what was successful, what wasn't. I think the one thing that we've learned, especially with Jicco and Field Agent, is that once we had the idea, we sought out, current clients, other influential people, and really got their feedback early on. And so that was really a key success point for us to be able to get that feedback early and then be able to make adjustments. The other thing is we made adjustments on the fly pretty rapidly. So that was also a plus for us. I think if you think of it in terms of what we had done differently, it worked out pretty well for us. I don't know that we would have changed anything major as we were going forward. Now, we probably could have waited a little bit longer to make sure we had a few of the bugs worked out. But, Lori, you find that out with technology. You get it out in the market, get it in the user's hands, and they tell you so many things that you would have never thought of on your own by getting in their hands.
No, I know exactly what you mean. When it comes to feedback, it's something that is vitally important to any business across the board, be it a startup or something that's long been standing. It's what pushes a business forward. You have to understand what it is that people are looking for and what it is that they would like to see more of or less of in order to move forward. I find that focus groups for smaller businesses and entrepreneurs tend to be one of the easiest ways to get that feedback aside from surveys online. Do you feel like that's what you utilized as your method of obtaining that feedback? Did you use forums? Did you use surveys? What do you feel like you utilized in terms of obtaining that information from your existing clients and customers?
The beauty of what we do, we actually have a research company. How about that? So,
there you go. See?
We can use Field Agent to garner information. So from a practical standpoint for us, if you look at the amount of data that's coming in, number of questions that are coming in, we've kind of started to mine our own data. We looked at more and more questions that were saying, gosh, could I just have this quicker, or could you just answer this simple question for me? We have a DIY tool within Field Agent that allows that to happen. But the first piece, if your listeners are thinking through this, sometimes the most impactful data that you have is coming through either your customer service, or in our case, our online forums coming back and forth and information. So if you look at that and start to mine it, you start to notice the type of questions people are asking. So that's kind of a starting place for really understanding, how this is going to play out. From that, we've got a pretty robust group here from an ideation standpoint. So we went through the ideation process, brought this to life. And then if you're a true researcher out there, if you look at kind of the diets and triads type of thing, we would get a couple of people in the room. We didn't want any more than that. We did a lot of one-on-ones and really asked them their perspective on what we were doing to get that feedback prior to launching.
there were focus groups held where you really are directly contacting, reaching out, and asking for that information, which is an important piece. And I think sending out surveys, you're going to get X, Y, and Z amount of information, but it's a lot more comprehensive when you actually take the time to sit down with people in person and have the opportunity to grab that feedback.
Yeah, when I started up for us too, we also had a working model, so we weren't showing people concept sheets.
Right.
We had a true working model, so that was also a positive for us.
And you have that ability to create those working models for someone to take the time to go through it, and that is important. But if you don't have a working model, definitely having, spec sheets and information to go through is useful as well. So, but Rick, you have been absolutely awesome. I love chatting with you. I love having you on the show. I love hearing about all the new technologies that you're creating and
You're
following
encouraged.
along.
Thank you.
So, thank you. So I'm assuming that you are continuing to look for new markets to expand into and creating your new ideas as you continue to, mine the data that you do have. But I'd love to know if there's any way that the techie community could possibly help you with that magic wand that we always tend to wave at the end of the show. With anything at all, if you could change across the board with the three corporations, whether it be how they interact or, what it is that you deal with on a day-to-day basis throughout managing the three, what do you feel like you would change at this point?
I think for us, because we came from the CPG background and we went so deep and heavy into that, I think taking our methodology and our product and putting it into other verticals sooner is probably something we would have done. Now, in hindsight, it makes sense, but at the same time, when you're first getting started, you want to stay, true to what you know, which are consumer products and services. But when we look at what we're doing today, Lori, and when I look at the verticals of insurance, the verticals of financial institutions, the verticals of quick serve restaurants, I could go on and on. They all need what we have, which is quick, fast, actionable insights from locations. We probably would have taken it to verticals sooner versus later. And that's not a bad thing, but it's something we probably would have done in hindsight.
Nice. I love it. You would have shifted the way that you were entering the market with the specific products, and I like the thought process.
We went deep in a couple of verticals, and now we're going broad. We probably would have stayed with the depth, but not as focused as much, and gone broader sooner.
Gotcha. That's something that I think we would need a magic wand to possibly change, Rick.
Well, I think that the magic wand for us, especially if your listeners are out there, is that any vertical that's out there today or any industry that's out there that really needs information, we would love to have them engage field agent. If nothing else, if we could help them, great. If not, it would be a great conversation to have to see if we couldn't send them down another direction. If we've learned anything over the years, Lori, is to say no to things and not maybe. Maybes are killers in our industry. So we'll say yes if we can do it. We'll say no if we can't. We're not going to leave them with a maybe. So I'd love to engage to see what other people are thinking about how we can actually use Field Agent and Jicco to kind of drive the market.
Excellent. Well, I will be sure to link to Field Agent, Class Check, and Jicco, of course, from the show notes page. But, Rick, please share the best way for our listeners to find you.
The easiest way is from our website, which is www.fieldagent.net. That's the .net, Field Agent. And then for Jicco, it's just gojicco.com. And we'd love your users just to click on gojicco.com, ask a question, see what they get, and give us feedback as to what kind of response they get from our search engine. So those are the two primary ways they can get a hold of us.
Wonderful. Again, I'll be sure to put a link directly to askjicco.com to Field Agent as well. So wonderful. Rick, thank you for joining us again this week.
Lori, it's my pleasure.
Rick, it is always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you again for joining us. I love hearing about all of the new technologies that you are consistently creating. So keep it up. And techie community, if you're looking to make a dent in your market research, head on over to Jicco.com today. Get an answer a minute to make a dent in your research. Stop getting stuck there. Rick has created that solution. Thanks again, Rick. So head on over to Jicco.com. You can always reach Rick West through our show notes page over at technology-equality.com/Rick Jicco. And I'll be sure to also include links to the previous episodes with Rick on Field Agent and also Class Check so you guys don't miss out. Thank you again for joining us here for episode 72. And until our next episode, when we continue to hear the journey, find the pain, and create solutions, enjoy the week.